vision in this interim government is to make ABC a leader and a real war horse of our struggle. We want to grow it, expand it, hire and train more hands, and broadcast round the clock, around the world, and take command of the media space of this world.
You can enjoy all round the clock, 24/7 exclusive moments of bliss as an ABC Amba TV Club member. A cappella. Latest Nigerian African movies, global politics, ABC Amba News and updates, historical documentaries, and lots more.
Hello?
In our daily programs, we have Undaunted, ABC Amba News, bringing into the news untold stories with Onyi Okpala and Star Smart. Exclusive discussion, revolutionary panel conversation, infotainment, edutainment, intro governmental debates on topical issues with Tar Paddy King, State of the Liberation Movement, fronting IG and people of Ambazonia's position, the Struggles Weekly Update with Secretary Martin Mungwa, PhD, FASCE. Health is wealth, health education and awareness within the Ambazonian community with Dr. Yaya. Liberation Prayer, an intercessory ministry for Ambazonia with Pastor Victor Amba. Our Freedom, spiritual awareness and education for the Ambazonian community with Pastor Victor Amba and Pastor Commando. Church and Politics, neutralizing the myths and preconceived religious and political philosophies that limit the Christian involvement in the realms of decent politics with Pastor Commando. The Horizon, the voice of the Ambazonian woman with Dr. Patience Abiedo and Lady Casey. Our Amber History, bringing to limelight the hidden history of Ambazonia to the world with Pastor Commando. Appointment on community building, education on patriotism within the Ambazonian communities with Ma Rachel Itatima. Ethics for an Imagination, watchdog of basic principles and morals of a nation at war with Ma Dorothy Ngwa. Upcoming programs: Pigeon News, Vernacular Talk Show, County Roots, Activists Corner, Amba Focus, only on ABC Amba Television. We the people, the voice of the voiceless.
A very good day to you and welcome to today's edition of the Flash News. I am Star Smart and today we'll be delving into Trump's tariff policy, a gambit to reduce trade deficit or a recipe for disaster. Well, you're welcome back. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the global economy, President Donald Trump has reiterated his commitment to imposing tariffs on all imports, citing the need to reduce the U.S. trade deficit and promote domestic manufacturing.
We're going to bring companies back to our country. You look at even today, as I was driving over, I see these empty, old, beautiful, like steel mills and factories that are empty and falling down. Some have been converted to senior citizens' homes, but that's not going to do the trick. And we're going to bring the companies back. We're going to lower taxes still further for companies that are going to make their product in the USA. We're going to protect those companies with strong tariffs, because I'm a believer in, to me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff. And it's my favorite word. It needs a public relations firm to help it, but to me, it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary. Tariffs I brought in with tariffs, and I was just getting started. Then COVID came, and we had because I tell you what, I did a very good job in COVID. Nobody knew what the hell it was. I call it the China virus because I like being a little more accurate. But when that came, but we got hundreds of billions of dollars just from China alone, and I hadn't even started yet. But tariffs are two things, if you look at it. Number one is for protection of the companies that we have here and the new companies that will move in, because we're going to have thousands of companies coming into this country. We're going to grow.
Well, at the heart of Trump's tariff policy is a 10% tax on all imports, a measure that the president believes will generate significant revenue for the government and encourage companies to relocate their production facilities to the United States. Well, we are going to make America great again, and one of the ways we're going to do it is by imposing tariffs on all import, was what you heard Donald Trump saying tariffs are one of his favorite words. Well, according to what he believes, it is going to be a beautiful thing. Now, critics of Trump's tariff policy argue that it could have far-reaching and devastating consequences for the United States economy. They point out that tariffs are essentially a tax on consumers and that they could lead to higher prices for goods and services. Tariffs are a price recipe for disaster, said Adam Posen, president of the Peterson Institute for International Economies. He says they're going to hurt American consumers, and they're going to hurt American businesses, and they're going to hurt the U.S. economy as a whole. As a matter of fact, Adam Posen considers this a very bad idea. Let's take a listen of what he thinks.
Fits together, because they fundamentally don't understand, this is clear from their speeches and their writing, that the economy is more than the sum of individual bilateral government bargains about individual industries and sectors. And this is why you get perverse things like them advocating a bunch of things that'll drive the dollar up, and then them saying we'll take ridiculous measures to drive the dollar down. It's like, you take a crazy over-the-counter medicine, and then you take an illegal drug to offset the side effects, right? I mean, this is no way to understand things. And similarly, they're repeated mistaking that trade deficits are inherently bad and that the trade deficits are driven by other countries cheating, rather than, as again my colleague Maury Obsal just published, driven by factors about capital flows and relative growth rates and U.S. domestic choices. And similarly on fiscal, domestic fiscal isn't our focus, but we just had published, not Peterson, a bunch of academics at the NBER just published a definitive study of the 2017 Tax Act, and it showed that if the tax cuts that specifically targeted investment, like expensing or depreciation, had beneficial effects, and the tax cuts more broadly gutted revenues for the federal government with no growth.
Trump remains committed to his tariff policy and has even gone so far as to call tariff the most beautiful word in the dictionary, as we heard from the video earlier. Well, his tariff policy, really the key to reducing the United States trade deficit and promoting domestic manufacturing, has been the question. Is this his tariff policy really the key to reducing the U.S. trade deficit and promoting domestic manufacturing? Or is it a gamble that could have disastrous consequences for the United States economy? Well, let's try to give this an in-depth analysis. First of all, we see that Donald Trump's tariff policy embodies his Make America Great Again agenda, the ethos of Make America Great Again, by prioritizing economic independence and revitalizing domestic manufacturing. The approach, grounded in patriotism, seeks to recalibrate America's trade relationships and bolster the nation's industrial backbone. However, it has sparked debate regarding its broader economic impact. At its core, the policy hinges on the belief that imposing tariffs on imports will reduce the trade deficit and incentivize the resurgence of American manufacturing. By leveling the playing field, Trump's administration aimed to protect industries that have been undermined by decades of unbalanced trade practices and outsourcing. Critics argue that tariffs could inadvertently increase the trade deficit by dampening exports or raising costs for consumers. However, proponents contend that short-term adjustments are necessary to achieve long-term economic independence, a goal central to Trump's vision. By prioritizing domestic production, the policy champions American workers and underscores the importance of self-reliance. Well, we'll see that another concern centers on the potential for higher consumer prices due to increased import costs. Yet Trump and his supporters believe that the initial cost of recalibrating trade policies are outweighed by the benefits of a robust domestic economy. The strategy challenges businesses to innovate and invest in American-made alternatives, fostering resilience and reducing reliance on foreign supply chains. While the prospect of retaliatory tariffs from other nations poses another challenge, while such measures could escalate tensions, the administration viewed them as an opportunity to assert America's strength and renegotiate trade agreements on more favorable terms. For Trump, this reflects a broader strategy of leveraging hardline policies to protect American interests and ensure fair treatment in global markets. Well, let's take a look at the rest of Donald Trump talking about his economic plans and the tariff policy and how he expands on it to see the bright side from his perspective.
Detroit and how horribly it has been, it's just horrible because we've been talking about Detroit's coming back for 40 years and it's never come back. And it's very dependent on the car industry. Well, they've lost 60% of the business over a long period of time. And what happened is I found out a friend of mine builds auto plants. That's all he does. He builds auto plants. That's what he's good at. He doesn't want to build an apartment. All he wants to build is, and he builds the biggest in the world. And for the last year and a half, if anybody's heard me speak, I was talking about Mexico as a tremendous challenge for us right now. Tremendous. China is building massive auto plants in Mexico. And they're going to build them, and they're going to take those cars and sell them into the United States. They're very near the border, and they're going to have all the advantages and none of the disadvantages. And that's going to be the end of Michigan. It's going to be the end of, frankly, South Carolina. Going to be the end of everything. So I've been talking about this, and I said to him about 9 months ago, I said, you know what? I want you to do me a favor, John. His name is John. I don't want to give his last name because he might not like it. But I said, I want to see an auto plant. I want to go and see one of these, you press a button and everything works, right? I want to see one of the big ones. He said, all right, good. I said, where do we go? I'd like to go to Michigan. I'd like to go to someplace in the United States. He said, no, we can't do that. Why? We're not building anything big in the United States. That's not where, we don't build the big ones here. I said, where are you building the biggest ones? He said, in Mexico. We're building giant plants, the biggest plants anywhere in the world. In Mexico, I said, so you mean they're going to make cars cheaply? They have advantages over labor and other things, and they're going to sell them into the United States, and they're going to put Michigan out of business. Is that what? I don't know anything about that. All I do is build the plants. If you want to see a plant, we'll go to Mexico. I'll show you the biggest plant in the world. That was 9 months ago. I saw him, and I talked about it all the time because I think it's a serious threat to our country, because not only autos, but other things. So then I see him. 2 days ago, I was talking at another club, very nice club, and like this, except, I don't know, I think you people are probably even wealthier, okay? This was in Detroit, okay, which was appropriate. And I was showing them all sorts of charts about how their car, it's just gone down, it's like terrible. And I saw him, and I said, oh, how are you doing? How have you been? I said, could I ask you, how are those plants that you mentioned, those giant plants that you're building in Mexico, how is that coming along? Have you finished them? No, sir. They abandoned the project when they heard you're running. They abandoned the project when they saw that you were winning and doing well. I said, wow.
all the same.
How many cars we have? Mercedes-Benz, BMW, all of the different Volkswagen, millions and millions of cars. And then I said farm products. They don't want our they don't want anything from us. We have deficits that are crazy. And we're not going to have them anymore. We're going to put tariffs on them, and they're going to do, and you know what they can do? The Mercedes-Benz will start building in the United States. And they have a little bit, but you know what they really are? Assembly, like in South Carolina. But they build everything in Germany, and then they assemble it here. They get away with murder because they say, oh, yes, we're building cars. They don't build cars. They take them out of a box and they assemble them. We could have our child do it.
Can we come back? $1 trillion worth of imports.
And they don't have to pay. And the higher the tariff, the more likely it is to have them come into the
higher the tariff, the more you're going to put on the value of that piece, those goods, the higher people are going to have to pay in shops.
Ready? The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff.
That will take many, as you know, that will take many years.
In fact, I'll tell you, there's another theory is that the tariff, you make it so high, so horrible, so obnoxious that they'll come right away. When I do the 10%, 10% is really, first of all, 10% when you collect it is hundreds of billions of dollars. The numbers that you're talking about, all reducing our deficit. But really, so there's two ways of looking at a tariff. You can do it as a money-making instrument, or you can do it as something to get the companies. Now, if you want the companies to come in, the tariff has to be a lot higher than 10%, because 10% is not enough. Guys, they're not going to do it for 10. But you make a 50% tariff, they're going to come in. Let me tell you the other thing about tariffs that's great. Our steel companies, as you know, 3-4 years ago, they were all when I was in office, I saw a man from a big steel company, and he was devastated. I knew him for a long time, and it's been a tough business. It was a great business many years ago, and I would not let U.S. steel be sold to Japanese, by the way. It's psychological.
I've never met the guy, so I think he has a lot of personality traits that make him completely unsuited to being president. And also, I think his policy prescriptions, to the extent that they exist and he understands them, he still doesn't know how tariffs work. We're 8 years into this thing, 9 years in. He still thinks China pays the tariffs when they're paid by American companies.
I've seen him talk about tariffs.
Very confused guy.
Wait, so China's not paying tariffs right now?
The tariffs are paid by the American companies that import the Chinese goods. That's the way it's such a fundamental, and I see you looking a little confused on this one. Yeah, I'm confused. This is the way tariffs work. What Trump did is place tariffs on Chinese imports. By the time the imports get here, China's been paid for this stuff. Maybe they get net 120 terms, right? But in a sense.
Well, there you see the concern for the general public, so to put. You see their concern, and then Donald Trump is still saying more reliance on American produce, more reliance on American products. But in conclusion, we've heard the complaints of people who critique Donald Trump and his tariff plans and policies. And we also have seen his idea for this tariff plan. It's still a question of a patriotic gamble. But then in conclusion, we could say that Trump's tariff policy reflects a patriotic gamble, a calculated effort to prioritize American workers and industries. While the approach has faced criticism, like you've seen a couple of, it embodies a bold vision for economic sovereignty, encouraging the nation to reclaim its industrial might and reinforce its place as a global economic leader. Well, away from the United States and back on the home front, Ambazonia, we see that the Cameroon's Bar Council has rejected the findings of the gendarmes regarding the torture of Barrister Tamfu Richard and is now calling for an impartial investigation. The council is seeking a probe conducted by an impartial body or a joint team, citing concerns over the gendarmes' objectivity. Well, in a letter and communique to the minister delegate at the presidency in charge of defense, the president of the Cameroon's Bar Association has urged the government to consider alternative investigation options. The association is questioning the validity of the accusations against Barrister Tamfu Richard, who was even seen being brutally assaulted by 2 gendarmes in a military pickup. Well, the incident has sparked widespread outrage, with many condemning the use of excessive force by the gendarmes. The UIAI viral, has also issued a statement strongly condemning the attack on Barrister Tamfu Richard, describing it as a serious attack on the legal profession and fundamental rights. The Cameroon Bar Council's rejection of the gendarme's findings highlight the need for an independent and impartial investigation into the incident as the situation continues to unfold. As the situation continues to unfold, many will be watching. Not just ABC, but of course ABC as well will be watching to see how the government responds to the council's demand. But then let's take a look at this barbaric act that was carried out against Barrister Tamfu Richard, which caused the need for this investigation. Let's take a look.
Ouais, chef, ouais, c'est quoi ça? Ouais, chef, ouais, c'est quoi ça?
When we talk of abuse of power, misuse of power, inhumane actions, human rights violation, human rights abuse, barbaric actions, you name it. That's a glimpse of that video explaining multiple terms, multiple human rights violations in only a short clip. Where do you see a barrister being stomped on and abused like that? For what reason? For what charges are there that warrants a barrister, someone who represents the law, to be abused in broad daylight by so-called gendarmes in the eye of the entire masses? It goes to show a lot. It goes to show how the entire law in the Cameroons is absolutely not functional. Well, this investigation into the torture of Barrister Tamfu Richard has been marred by controversy. But then it goes again to beg the question, if this can happen in the eyes of the entire public, what then goes on to happen behind closed doors? What then goes on to happen behind these prisons where a lot of Ambazonians have been arrested arbitrarily for no just cause? Just like what we're seeing here, Barrister Tamfu Richard, who has been attacked and brutalized for no just cause. There's not been any reason as to why he was not just abused, not just arrested, but physically going through these barbaric actions by the gendarmes. Oh, well, looking at the investigation of Barrister Tamfu Richard, we again see that the incident has sparked widespread outrage, with many condemning the use of excessive force by the gendarme brigade. The investigation into the torture of Barrister Tamfu Richard has been marred by controversy, with many questioning the impartiality of the gendarmes who were tasked with investigating the incidents. Gendarmes are the one who abused the said person in question, and you bring the same gendarmes to investigate the situation. How barbaric and how outrageous can that be? It's no wonder why we see the entire public getting angry by this decision. It is shocking that the investigation was left in the hands of those same element perpetrating the act, making it highly unlikely that a balanced report will be produced. The fact that Barrister Tamfu Richard has not been incriminated for vandalism raises even more questions about the integrity of the investigation. It's possible that the barrister president's initial lack of action and his dinner with the gendarmerie boss may have contributed to the escalation of the issue. Well, as we pointed out, the barrister's president's vocalness on the matter now seems like a response to public criticism rather than a genuine attempt to seek justice. This lack of accountability and transparency is a clear indication of the injustices that pervade the society, especially in the Cameroons. The proverb, injustice everywhere, it is the thread of justice everywhere, couldn't be more relevant in this situation. It highlights the need for us to do what is right, not just what we have the right to do. In this case, it means demanding a thorough and impartial investigation into the torture of Barrister Tamfu Richard. It is time for Amazonians to stand up for justice and ensure that those responsible for this heinous act are held accountable. Anything less would be a travesty of justice. Well, with that, we've come to the end of the Flash News. That was it for today's Flash News. And until next time, I am Star Smart, and thank you for tuning in as always.